Continuum time.
Guys, clap it up for me.
As far as we know, there was a Griots before the first humans. Then you mix the whole song. This is how the chorus went. As far as we know, there was a Griot. Now we'll do the whole song again, but we ain't got time.
For the first human developed in an ego,
As far as we know, there was a Griot. Before the first human developed an inner ego.
Before continental conference.
Yes, what a Griot was. The Griot being the storyteller. They're responsible for passing down information to the next generation.
Do it again.
Do it again.
Do it again.
I diagnosed this nation with fear of a black planet. Black planet. Black planet.
We're looking at rapping right now, and what rappers are represented, and we're not honoring them. We're not honoring them.
Djembe, which is an ancient West African drum, kora, which is an ancient West African stringed instrument.
But what's more important is that we transmit information. We've been separated from the information we're supposed to be transmitting.
Rewind your mind back to the side.
Rewind your mind back to the silence.
I'm up. Oh, remind me to tell you about this dream I had. But first, let's review where we are. Last week, we were discussing the brain and how it works when it comes to you staying woke. Where your notes at? Here we go. The brain is made of billions of brain cells called neurons. Neurons fire off in patterns or rhythms called brain waves. And this firing sends messengers called neurotransmitters. You got that? The part of the brain that's large in people is called the cerebral cortex. And it's what makes us good at communication, thinking, and memory. Remember that? Now, when people communicate, research has shown that the brain waves tend to synchronize. And when it comes to learning, a famous experiment called the Bobo doll experiment, children watched an adult beat up a toy bear. No, that's not true. A toy clown, intended to imitate them, while those who didn't watch it tended not to. So how our brain works is affected by what and who we're exposed to. And being conscious means you take responsibility for that. Okay, anything I'm missing? Let's try to remember. How about you put it in the comments section? After all, this is about you. Remembering your rhythm, rhyme, and reason. What if for a long time you got left without something conscious or woke which could guide your next steps? You may say, I suppose I could fall back asleep. How long do lessons last? Would my memory keep? For once and for all, I'll explain how it works. How woke gets recalled, where our dark hour lurks. So to finish up our conversation on the brain, let's look at memory, which is our ability to retain information or a representation of past experiences. And whenever we're talking about being woke, we are discussing our ability to retrieve and apply this information to our actions. But let's be really clear. At the CUREiculum, we understand that we aren't just woke because of what we know, but when knowing what we know means that we finna grow. But of course, memory does play an important role in our ability to learn something and apply what it is we know. Now, as we mentioned, there's storage of information and past experiences within the brain. So how does it get in there? We're going to break it down in two types of memory: individual memory and collective memory. Let's look first at individual memory. These are memories that are formed out of the experiences you have in your lifetime. Now, the process of memorizing something occurs through what's called neuroplasticity, which is just another way of saying it's how our senses are able to respond to an experience or information that they get. And when this happens, the brain can recognize pathways and start to form new ones for new information. Whether it's something taught through words or reading, or sensory experiences like learning how something tastes. It shapes how the nervous system begins to operate, where you're adapting to your environment, storing new information and memories, mastering a skill. Well, it means it's happening. And through neuroplasticity, the brain reinforces memories that it considers important and prunes off the ones that are not. Now, research shows in order for this to happen and for stuff actually to get into the brain, it has to be proven to be relevant and important to someone. And the secret to getting things into our memory, to getting them into the brain, deals with moving it from your short-term memory to your long-term memory. See, most things that we experience just goes into a place of sensory memory, meaning it happens and it echoes a little bit, and then it goes out. Echoes a little bit, and then it goes out. And then it goes out. You don't remember it. But it's when we give a little bit more attention to something that it gets into our short-term memory, and we're able to keep it there through a process of repetition. Saying it over and over for a while, talking about it, researching different aspects of it, kind of like rehearsing it. However, in a fairly short amount of time, short-term memory also gets kicked out. Moving it from short-term memory to long-term memory involves the process of transfer and retrieval. And this is where our brains start to see the importance of what it is that we're experiencing. And it involves activating prior knowledge, things that are actually already in your long-term memory, and connecting it to the thing you're experiencing in the short-term memory. Finding some type of association between the two things. How this new information is unlike, or connected to something that you already know. And once it gets in there, the next step is to retrieve it. And it can be done a number of different ways, from writing it down or having a conversation about it, to taking the information out and using it in some type of experiment or applying it to what's happening right now. Oh, and sleeping on it too. Sleeping is really important to how memory is formed. But the main point is that you have to do something with this new information to prove to your brain that it's relevant. But again, this pruning process of our memories is ongoing. So as conscious people, the information that we consider to be important, we take time to retrieve this information and compound it with new information that we see as connected. This is how we grow our conscious database. Now, it's important to mention that being blasted with overstimuli or an overload of information to process, kind of like what we experience on our timelines, makes it harder to distinguish relevant information from irrelevant information, signals from noise. And in these moments, when consuming just the sensory information, our minds are not able to build new important memories. Two other things shown to not go well with memory is multitasking and distraction. See, your memory, it ain't perfect. It's not a snapshot of a moment. It's information that your senses were aware of at a given time, what you heard or thought you heard, saw or thought you saw, and so on and so on. So it's valuable. After all, what we're aware of can be biased by our own values or what we tend to pay attention to. So every time we remember something, we're actually reconstructing pieces from our senses and filling in the gaps, or using what others recall to help fill it in for us. Which takes us to type number 2, collective memory, the shared knowledge or information that a group has. Collective memory is how a group remembers an event or their past. And this can be any type of social group, from a nation to a certain community to a generation. So this is the part of memory that recognizes that none of this is done alone. As social creatures, we always are using what others know. But naturally, it tends to emerge through commonly accepted individual memories. In all cases, collective memory, like individual memory, reveals something about the values of a group. Where your values are is where your attention goes. And attention makes memories. So where we find the alignment of a group's values is where the collective memory tends to form. And not just that, the narratives, the ideas of the social group. And for this reason, collective memory is of interest to psychologists, historians, anthropologists, philosophers, and sociologists. But as conscious people, it deserves our attention because, as the great poet Maya Angelou stated, you can't really know where you're going until you know where you've been. So how can we know where we've been? Our answer may be hidden in our structure and function, or as she put it, Why the cage bird sings. Generations of wild birds raised in captivity managed to retain their bird song despite never hearing it sung. A species of mice that burrow tunnels managed to pass this skill down to mice who had never even seen sand. What we may call instinct in these species may also be a representation of their collective memory. But is this in humans? Well, let's take a look. The human baby is born with all of her oocytes, which are the immature egg cells in the ovary. This means that our grandmothers, when pregnant with our mothers, were actually also developing half of the genetic material that made us. Now, while it's not accurate to say that memories were being passed down at this time, this is what research has shown. Sperm or egg cells, which carry the DNA, the structure that makes us, are also imprinted with information that affect generations to come. Factors surrounding the DNA that impact what genes ultimately get expressed, something called epigenetics. Research has shown how different environmental factors and life experiences determine the expression of different genes. If you think of your DNA like a circuit board in your home, epigenetics has the power to turn a gene on or off. So just because something's in the DNA doesn't mean it's going to show up, even in the case of identical twins. Now, studying epigenetic memory in humans hasn't been easy due to our long generations and lifetimes, and it's difficult to keep records on all that. However, certain evidence has supported the following. Descendants of survivors of the Jewish Holocaust have shown to have lower levels of cortisol, the chemical in the body that is high during stressful experiences that helps us to bounce back from them. And these descendants also had a tendency to suffer from diabetes and some neurological disorders such as schizophrenia. This again points to epigenetic transgenerational inheritance. Now, researcher and clinical psychologist Dr. Joy DeGruy has theorized on the cultural adaptive multi-generational impact of oppression on African Americans, something she's coined as post-traumatic slave syndrome. This points to some of the nurture and nature aspects affecting the health of African Americans. In addition, factors such as nutrition, smoking and alcohol, and stress, particularly from the maternal side, has shown frequent evidence in transgenerational inheritance of disease. And this has been found in animals and humans. So some experiences that the parent had may have been transmitted to the offspring. But wait, it's not just trauma that gets passed down. We started this describing the cage bird that's able to sing its own song without ever hearing it. But how was this in humans? Somehow, despite these disadvantages and abnormal situations, something structured within them retained the memory of these generational experiences. Psychiatrist Carl Jung famously hypothesized on the collective unconscious, shared memories that descendants of a common ancestor can tap into. And while this theory may still be in question, just imagine how far back this might go. Conceivably, could it extend all the way back to the first memory, a very still place of observation? Now, while his theory may lack evidence, collective memory has been maintained by other structural means in societies. Since ancient time, across the West African Empire of Mali, the role of the griot served the function of holding the collective memory of their people. And even today, the griot, also known as the Jolly, holds high esteem in society as a historian, poet, storyteller, musician, and advisor to leaders. Their long years of study and mastery of the oral tradition makes them an archive of their people's memories and a repository of the transmitted values within their culture. So retention of our experiences and where we've been is happening in our bodies and inside culture itself, in how they function and how they are structured. And as you probably know, melody, rhythm, rhyme, storytelling have held a special power, the power to reinforce memories and thereby values in people. But hang on to that thought.
Have you forgotten the prophecy? I'm already gone.
This week's lyric video, Just Remember, pays homage to the classic book, The Prophet, by Khalil Gibran. In the original book, there are 26 poetic essays, each giving philosophical and spiritual musings on topics such as love, marriage, children, work, things that have held high importance or value throughout time.
I use this song as an opportunity to talk about a few topics, including media,
Politics,
sex, and money. Things within today's culture.
with value.
Money is the symbol of a value, of a resource. This is what they now use to carry out any trade if they allow you.
And like Gibran, I tried in my verses to extract the core nature of these things, the aspect of them that regardless of time or space remains true.
Knowing or being beautiful you. Being is beautiful as you. A being is beautiful as you.
So why did I do this, you might ask? A prompt from this week wanted to know what brought you to watching the CUREiculum. Underneath it is asking you, what about your own personal values may have led you to watch this? And as another layer to it, were you aware enough of the thought process that brought you here?
Are those reasons still there today, or have they been kicked out of the memory?
Because someone made a decision out of a series of things that happened, that they observed, things that were stored in their memory, to invest time
Here. And if this someone has forgotten why, there's probably a reason for that. It probably has to do with what in the world we have already bought into. I'm Uncle Baye, onward and upward.